Oh, whoa, whoa, it's episode 18 of the Gaming Memories podcast, which means we are legally of age now. So if you've been having some promiscuous fantasies about yours truly, you don't have to feel like a pedophile anymore because we are officially 18. And by we, I mean me, aka Kate Call, your host, aka Roboclip, the blessed beatmaker, the man petitioned by the Holy Gaming Triforce, Trilogy, Trifecta, whatever you want to use, of Miyamoto the Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack the Holy Ghost, appeared to me in prophetic holy vision, commanding me to create the one true gaming, the greatest gaming podcast on all of the earth, and really basically in all of the universe, because as far as we can tell, we're alone out here, bitches. No, we're not. Aliens are real. Google it. Look into it. Anyway, they said create the one true gaming podcast simply by interviewing creative and interesting people about their favorite gaming memories growing up. And in this episode of the podcast, we have Aaron Simmons, or Aaron Spaziano, aka Gaszia, who is one half of the dynamite, super successful music producer duo X and G, which consists of Action and or Sion. He's going to get so mad at me. I call it Action. I think I've been pronouncing it wrong. He's going to listen to this and be like, you stupid dumbass. You've been friends with me for how long? Can't say my damn artist name right. Anyway, and the other person is Gaszia Aaron, who's on the podcast today. Their producer duo is called X and G, short for Action and Gaszia. They have been homies for a long time. They were part of the original Damn Son crew way back in the day before they linked up and became a super successful music production duo. They have songs with Skrillex, songs on Alza, songs with Dog Blood. They have songs with millions and millions and millions of views all over the internet. They've been playing giant shows like EDC in Orlando, and all around are super, super badasses. And I'm very grateful that Gaszia, man, you know what? Should I cut this out? Should I cut it out? I don't know. I had a little bit to drink, guys, and I made this, what you call it, New Year's goal. I'm going to edit this shit. I'm going to be real. So we're going to leave it as is. But Aaron was so gracious to grace my studio with his presence and talk to me about some video games, about production, about music, about being an all-around creative maestro, genius, Beethoven, what the is his name? Toccata in D minor. It's like my favorite classical song. Bach! He's like a modern-day Bach. Aaron Spaziano, X and G. Check him out. I'll put links to all their music and badass music videos in the description. Highly recommend them. They are experimental, bass, eclectic. Actually, that's some of the stuff recently. In their past, they were more chill. Now they're doing more house shit. They make everything. They do music for video games. They do music for movies, big shows, clubs, whatever, you name it. They can make it. Aaron is a bona fide badass, and therefore you should give a shit about his opinion when it comes to video games because he's a creative genius. Anyway, we had a great time talking. Other than that, it was a pretty good episode. Had to edit a couple things out because he said some super secret shit about the super secret internal workings of the super secret industry, and I had to edit some of that out. It'll be obvious during those sections that I had to edit it out. Just ride with us. Audio quality was good all around, and I'm just rambling at this point, motherfuckers. Remember the 5th of November. That is a good movie, by the way. And also remember to spread the good news of the Gaming Memories Gospel. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your pets, tell your cousins, tell your coworkers that you secretly hate, but you have to be nice to because you work in the same office together. And you don't want your life to be miserable hell, so you're nice to them anyway. Tell them to. Tell everybody about the Gaming Memories podcast, and you will be blessed with, I don't know, the gods. I don't know. They haven't talked to me for a couple of days. I've probably been drinking and masturbating too much, so I haven't had any revelation. But they'll talk to me soon enough. But I can tell you this: they are going to come back and bless you like Conor McGregor coming back and knocking the shit out of Cowboy Cerrone. How was that mother fight? It was amazing. It was only 40 seconds though. Kind of like my sex. A little short, amazing, but leaving the crowd wanting for more. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon. Enjoy the show. I say these things in the name of Miyamoto the Father, Kojima the Son, and Carmack the Holy Ghost. Amen. Oh shit, Aaron. the infamous Gaszia from
What's
X and G in the gaming memories. I don't know what to call this room. I've been thinking of calling it the Brew Lab, but I don't really like that. But I can't think.
The
of any
Brew
ideas?
Lab.
Because you brew stuff in here, creative shit
Right.
gets brewed in here.
But also, this is like a gaming podcast. This is like there's like a gaming room over there. So maybe like something gaming related, like a console or cartridge. But that might be cheesy though.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Brew Lab is kind of chill. Like I just imagine like the little, what is it like the beaker,
yeah.
and then like you put that like on the front door or something like that.
Yeah,
it says
beaker.
like the Brew Lab.
That's the way to put it, because I imagine like there's this mad scientist in here trying to create some sort of magnum opus, some creative, which I don't do, but that's what I like to pretend like I do in here. For those, I'll do like a little intro about who you are and why people should care about what you have to say. Basically, you're a musical genius. That's what I'll say. This is what's your last name? Spaziano, right?
Spaziano.
Didn't you have a different double last name for a while?
I mean, I still do. So yeah, I'm legally Simmons.
That's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
And so I go by Spaziano on Facebook and all that stuff. Like that's what I like to go by, because that's my dad's name. But I need to legally change it. So that's the confusion.
Aaron Spaziano, aka Gaszia, which is artist name, and that is half of X and G, which is a producer. I know you get this all the time, but Aaron, how do you classify your own music?
As in the genre and the style?
Yeah, genre.
I mean, it's all over the place. Like for a while we were doing what people called like experimental bass and all that stuff. And now we're kind of doing more like house stuff. And so I guess we're kind of just like eclectic style. Like we're like whatever we're feeling at the time. Like we made a Timbaland type of beat, and like we've done hip hop beats and like chill stuff or pop stuff, like whatever you want to, whatever like you're feeling, or like whatever we're feeling, like we'll do. It doesn't really matter. So
that's true. You guys have been all over the year. 4 a.m. is that your first EP?
Yeah, that was
that's
the
first thing I
EP.
remember you released. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and that's chill.
exactly.
Like down tempo. Yeah.
Yeah. Like super mellow. Like that's like what we came from, because we were both really into like really chill artists. Like for example, like Synchro or Submerged, or like there's this guy Castle, and like they're all doing like really chill type of stuff, and not really like a build and a drop and all that stuff, but it's just like people call it like headphone music. And so doing that for a while, and then kind of like transitioning from that over to like the 4 a.m. stuff, and like our first couple of remixes for East Coast and our buddy Hari Kiri. And so those were like more
I remember the Hari Kiri beat. I used to drum to that. That's a good beat.
Yeah.
I need to revisit it.
Yeah, I was listening to it like a couple weeks ago, and I was like, dang, like this is pretty cool still. And I wish I had the project, because I wanted to kind of beef it up more to play it out. But I think
the VIP release.
Yeah, exactly. Like kind of like beef it up and be like, yeah, like let's play this out. But I either the project is missing or some of the stuff is missing. But either way, I need to find that, because I would love to play it out again. It's super sick.
So you make beats, X and G. If you haven't heard of them, they're legit. I like the term eclectic, but I would say there is a like a common thread that runs through all of your stuff, including the minimal to the heavy bass stuff. And maybe that would be, I'm trying to put my finger on it. All your music is, it's eclectic, but also tight.
Tight in what way?
Yeah, it's not like eclectic, like a crazy sloppy madman that's like done too much acid. He's running around talking to God and aliens like some eclectic person. You're like Elon Musk.
So everything is
Dude's
like really
crazy,
clean.
but his shit's also together.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how I feel. Because you guys get really wacky and experimental, but it's also never overdone. And it's always like tight and clean and punchy and almost minimal. Look, the stuff. What's the album that had Damn on it?
Persona.
I think that's my favorite record of you guys so far. And I would listen to it sometimes and think like, there's literally no notes in this song. There's like a bass, right? There's like a low end sub, kind of some bass hits, and then it's just sounds.
Yeah.
But it all, and which sounds like it would be chaos, like a crazy guy on acid. Like you can't make any sense of it. But everything feels like it has parts in sections, and it makes sense even though it's just random sounds put together. But it makes sense even though there's no chords, there's no melody, but it doesn't sound like confusing. That's what I mean, like a crazy eclectic, but still like the shit's still together.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because like I remember with our first album, Anomalies, everyone was like, I don't understand this. Like there wasn't like as much form. It was much more like sloppy or messy, whatever you want to call it, in terms of like the arrangement. And then like with Persona, like everything was much more tighter.
Yes.
And it was just like you could follow the song, and so it was just
that's
like,
what I mean. It's all over. It's crazy, but you can follow it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it was just like taking that same sound palette that we used from like the Anomalies EP and making it in a much more formulaic way. Because especially like I remember like someone saying like, oh, your songs like aren't DJable, like you got like I can't play them out, and like we wanted them to be played out because that's the whole purpose of making music like that. So we were just like, all right, let's make everything tighter. And so we just like practiced like arrangement and just like seeing like how like dance music was made and kind of like mimicking it, and then,
understanding that why that arrangement is set a certain way so they can be played out by different people. Yeah,
and then just like I mean, like I said, like taking that sound palette and implementing it in that structure. And so I think that that's like one of my favorite releases too. Like from that album, I think we play the most tracks from it just because they are playable.
They play out well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also loved how dry the album is, just in general. I'm thinking of dry as like everything's tight. Like it's very common to get carried away with reverb. It's so easy and it sounds awesome, and we're like our ears are tuned. Like reverb just sounds beautiful to everybody.
It's my favorite plugin ever.
It's everything. Reverb is my favorite thing.
Yeah, I love reverb.
Reverb and delay. It's my favorite thing to play with. But I'm thinking about. I think it's Damn, but it has that like screeching sound when the drop hits.
Yeah, the yeah.
And I remember Omar showed it to me in his old Forester, and I remember just thinking like, it's so dry and tight. Like there's no reverb, but I don't care. I like the sound. It's almost, that was refreshing to me. It's just so dry and tight and punchy, and you could follow it, but it was just sounds.
Yeah.
And like that's what I say. You guys lean more towards, in my opinion, you're more on the Tom York end of the artist spectrum versus the Taylor Swift end of the artist spectrum, because it's so it's eclectic. Like you're not going to hear that sound anywhere else. At least I've never been exposed to that. And I know, like, Waxhole, he'll be on the podcast. Shout out to him. And a lot of people that will show me tracks. I don't dig that much for music, but I have a lot of friends that will shoot me stuff that they find is dope, and I'm always getting new tracks that way. And all of them know who you guys are. And I'll say, like, can you find me more X and G sounding stuff? Do you know anything? And they'll be like, I don't really know anything. Or the same thing happens with Lauren. Lauren's another one of my favorite producers. And I'm always asking them, like, if you guys find anything that reminds you of Lauren or close, send it to me, because it's really hard to find that sound.
Which is so cool. Like,
which is why I love him.
Exactly. Because like he just stands out. Like he's his own thing. And like, that's why you go to that artist. Whereas like in other genres, it's just like there's so many artists that like mimic the same style, and it's just like, okay.
And
like,
you can't tell them apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think most people, if they're familiar with X and G, I mean, I know you guys change genres a lot, but especially Persona, and what was the one before Persona?
It was called Anomalies.
Anomalies. That one had the symbols, right?
Yeah, like the 9 symbols.
Yeah, those two albums to me, that's when I feel like you guys broke out and really started like, oh, nobody sounds like this.
Yeah. I remember so many people being like, I've never heard anything like this before. And I was like, is that good? Is that bad?
How did you, how did you come up with that? Because those two albums sound fairly similar, and then you guys have a lot of those elements, like the organic percussive elements and the marching band stuff, I still hear in your newer tracks. But leading up to those two albums, Anomalies and Persona, how did you come up with a brand new sound?
I mean, for that, it was just like, okay, we've been doing the more experimental bass stuff, and while I love it and I love the sound, like it just doesn't pick up as well. I mean, now it's starting. It is starting to, like, Space Jesus is blowing up, and like Saruta and like all this like new wave of like this new weird experimental, they call it like freeform bass now, where it's just like all of that's like blowing up now. But at the time we were just like, hey, like this isn't working out. And like even for us, we're kind of just getting tired of like the scene and the clubs we were playing. It was always just like very disorganized. And so we're like, hey, like we want to go and make something to where we're playing more organized things, like there is order. There was just so much chaos, and like while I love chaos sometimes, I didn't want it to like control my life. So like just I will always love the more underground weird music, but there's just seems to be like something about it, like there's just like this like chaos behind it that's like kind of like hard to explain. But and so now like being on the other side and like playing these more like professional events, there's still some chaos, but it is much more controlled. Like I know where I'm going, I know who I need to talk to, I know like all those things, like where to play, stuff like that. And so with that,
I could see you showing up to some like crazy wook underground music festival in the middle of nowhere. No one knows who the coordinator is. No one knows where your tent is. No one knows what time you're playing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
like
we've you just traveled and you're tired and
we've shown up to like an event like that, and they're like, you might have a tent, and we didn't come prepared for a tent. This was like one of like the first festivals we ever played, and we were just like, you better have a tent, because like where are we gonna sleep else or otherwise? And so we got the tent, and the tent had like a wasp in it or something like that, and there was no sleeping bags. There was like nothing there. And so we're like, okay, this sucks. So luckily our friend, her name is Victoria, shout out to Victoria, she had an extra like tent, and she had like sleeping bags and all that stuff. So one of us slept in that tent with the wasp. We went and like cleaned it out and all that, and then someone else slept in the other one. And we're like, all right. And after that, we went home and we bought tents. And we're like, okay, no.
If we're going to be playing this scene, we got to be ready.
We got to be like ready for this. And so, like, I love all of that about it. And like, again, like I love the music, but once I saw like the actual culture behind it, I was like, this isn't like what I pictured. Like I expected things to be much more professional. But just with all that stuff, like I think because it's so underground, they don't have to like abide by the rules or the laws or whatever. Like they can go and kind of like anything goes. And so with that, it led us to kind of like exploring house more, and like finding a lot of like, it's called like tech house now. And so like now, I mean, tech house has a totally different meaning than when it did like when I first found tech house. Same thing with like dubstep even too. And so like now it's just like, okay, seeing these events and like seeing how it's, I guess, like popular in a way, and it's like very accessible. Like dubstep is very accessible now, but it's also, it just gets tiring after a while. And like I like much more chill music. Like for me, I love ambient music and like just really like mellow stuff. And so like hearing this like house music, we were like, oh, it's chill, and just like more like has like a vibe to it. And so even though I say I love ambient music, on the other side I do love like Skrillex, and I like the more like in your face but really again like eclectic and very unique stuff. So it just like gets you like really excited inside. And so like kind of like taking those two things, like having this really like edgy or music with an edge, and mixing with like the more chill and the more like minimal, like has like a vibe to it. It was like that seems like a good mix. And so instead of just like full force heavy or full force chill, like why not combine the two, like, and find like that balance?
And that's where you started coming up with that sound.
Right. And so like we kind of explored that sound with like Platinum and the Zoo. It was more just like housey and had a vibe to it. But then like I guess like being surrounded by the underground bass world, we were just like more influenced by it, by like the sound and the the culture and all that stuff. And like I said again, and don't get me wrong, I loved being a part of that culture, but for longevity's sake, it's like you got to kind of think about something else too.
Yeah.
So
well, there's a time and place. Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense. When you said you've always been into chill ambient music, I know Christian, the partner in X and G, is way into games. Did you grow up playing games?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I played,
That's what I thought. I think we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And I noticed a lot of people have mentioned, a lot of artists that I've heard on other podcasts that I've been on, reference games as part of the reason that maybe planted the seed. Like maybe they weren't making music as a teenager, but they were playing games and like really getting into the soundtracks or something.
Yeah.
And that's what they went to when they started playing music. What soundtrack, if you could say, what's the best game soundtrack? Right now, off the top of your head, what would it be?
I mean, that is a good question because I haven't really dived into too many soundtracks, but there was one in particular that stood out to me. It was like Sonic 3D.
Sonic 3D.
Yeah.
Nice. Was that the Dreamcast one?
No, it was PC actually.
PC.
Yeah.
Oh, Sonic 3D Blast. Is
Oh
it
yeah,
like,
yeah, 3D Blast.
Yeah, isometric view with squares.
Yeah.
Yeah. That game's awesome.
Yeah, and I remember having that on PC, and like my dad got like a joystick for the PC, so like I'd just be playing with like this joystick, and it was kind of like not like 2D. It was like kind of like a 3D plane, but you're still like looking above.
That's a isometric 3D.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Isometric. Yeah. And so I just remember playing that all the time, and I put the CD in my CD player one time, and you could play the soundtrack from the game, and I was like, oh,
blew your mind.
Yeah, so I would just like play that soundtrack all the time, and there was a couple of levels that had just like super chill music, and I was like, oh, this is so sick.
Yeah, you were into it. The first time I discovered that, I think PC games had been playable in CD players for a while. But when the PS1 came out, it was the first like at-home disc console that got really big. There were Sega CD and 3DO and some ones that didn't really take.
Yeah.
But the PS1 took, and I remember you could take the games and put them in your CD player, and they would just play the soundtrack of the game.
Oh, I never tried it with the PS1 game.
It was awesome. I don't know if it's every single game, but there's definitely games that could do it. Yeah, when you grew up gaming, you had a PC when you were a little kid?
Yeah.
Did you have consoles at home?
Yeah, so PS1 was like my first console.
PS1 was your first console?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
I remember like playing like Primal Rage.
Yes.
And
Primal Rage.
Akuji the Heartless, and oh my gosh, like Soul Calibur 2, and what was that other
so you
one?
liked fighting games, sounds like.
Yeah, like fighting games and just like puzzle games. Like another game that came out on PS2 was Prince of Persia. That was like one of my favorite games. And then on PS1, the game that has stood out to me the most, and I still play now on Xbox, is Crash Bandicoot. Like Crash Bandicoot is like number one for me.
Did you, they remade the Crash trilogy for PS4?
Yeah, so I have it on my Switch. I have the.
Is it on Switch?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Dang.
So I got a Switch, and I have the trilogy, and then I just got Crash Team Racing on Xbox, and me and my girlfriend play that so much.
Dude, Crash Team Racing for me, I had a PS1 and I had a 64 a little bit later, but I was always a PS1 kid, and the 64 was definitely, at least where I grew up, there was still, like, when I had a Sega, the NES kids would give me shit, and the Super NES. Super NES, I think, sold more and was ultimately more popular and more successful than the Genesis, and probably had better games. And I think the 64 has like more cultural impact, but the PS1 had so many games, and it was so
many
cheap.
good games.
So many good games.
And it's funny you say that the Genesis was so unpopular, because that was like the very first console I remember
it was my
playing.
first. So yeah, you're the first person to have the same two consoles.
Well, I mean, that one I didn't own. I had a babysitter when I was younger, and I would
you got to
go
play
there
the Genesis.
and play it all the time.
What do you remember? So how old were you when you're playing the Genesis?
I think I was like 8.
That's old enough. What do you remember from the Genesis?
I only played one game, and it was Donkey Kong 64.
Donkey Kong 64? That's a 64 game. Definitely not a Genesis game.
Donkey Kong Country. It was something like...
Donkey Kong Country, that's a Super Nintendo, not a Genesis.
I don't remember the exact one. It was some Donkey Kong game on Genesis.
There's Donkey
Maybe
Kong
it was just like Donkey Kong
Country.
Genesis.
Yeah, it's gonna be Donkey Kong Country.
Country?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like you a side scroller.
Yeah.
and you play like these. You play donkeys and you get bananas and you jump on reptiles.
And you could play Diddy too.
He plays Diddy. Yeah, that's a Super Nintendo game. One of the old that came out. That's actually perfect timing because that came out to compete with the PS1 in 3D graphics. So the Super Nintendo was coming at the end of its lifespan, and the PS1 and like the Sega Saturn were coming, and they were worried about 3D graphics, and so they went to Rare, who they've done a bunch of other games now, but I think at the time they weren't that. I think it was Silicon Knights actually, but they had access to early like 3D rendering computers, and what they did is they rendered the graphics like on supercomputers, like the little Donkey Kong character.
Yeah.
And then they'd animate it and then break it down to just like really low res images. And then they would give the Super Nintendo that to work with. So the game looked amazing for a Super Nintendo game because all the lighting and all the textures were all pre-baked and done on these supercomputers, and it was like a revolutionary new way. And so that game, like that, I could see yourself at 8 years old, like that game sticking out because when that game came out,
it looks so good.
People could not, like people were like, it's the PS1 killer. It's got better graphics. The PS1 was new, but like it just. I remember seeing it for the first time. I didn't have a Super Nintendo, and I'm like, fuck. Like, Genesis don't have that.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
It was super sick.
It was amazing. And it was a good game, too.
Yeah, it was super fun. Like, every time I would play, like, it looked good, and, like, it was just, like, cool. Like, it just, like, immersed you, like, in the world.
Yeah.
Like, that was, like, the one thing I loved about it. Same with, like, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and, like, all those, like, cool puzzle games.
Yeah.
To where they just, like, immerse you.
They
like,
have a Spyro trilogy. Is that on Switch as well?
Yeah, it's not. I haven't got that, but it's on Switch and Xbox, PS4, all that. But that's the other one I'll have to grab. But that one's another.
Did you ever play a game called Ape Escape on PS1?
Yes, that sounds so familiar.
You just had to catch monkeys and nets?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like...
That game was... That's an untold classic, in my opinion. It's so fun. It reminded me a little bit of Spyro and Crash because it had like that sort of timeless, like little kid, cartoony aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
But the game was actually really solid, really hard, and like it was. I think I don't remember how many monkeys total. There was a bunch of monkeys, and they like put them in weird ways where you have to figure out like mini puzzles to like find these monkeys and get to them. And I remember thinking that game was right up there. I liked Spyro. I didn't get into Crash, but Spyro and Ape Escape, I was definitely into.
Yeah, I don't think... I think I played like Ape Escape once or twice, but I definitely remember the name.
Yeah,
like,
it's good.
I remember it was kind of... It wasn't big, but it was definitely like one of like the more popular titles at like Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
So Crash Team Racing, I remember loving that game, thinking... I still to this day, I haven't played the new... How's the new like remastered version?
I mean, it looks really good, and it's super fun. Like, I remember there being something about the controls. They're a little like it kind of like takes a second to kick in, and it's the same with the Crash trilogy too. Like, they were a bit more responsive with like the jump on the PS1, and now like you have to like hit it like just a split second, like when you actually, or like a split second before.
They feel a little laggy, maybe.
Yeah, like laggy.
I wonder if that's because you're playing on Switch.
No, even like on the PS4.
Even on the PS4, it's like that?
Yeah, I remember like playing at my sister's house because she has a PS4, and it was just like a little lag to it.
Have you gone back and played the original on the PS1 to see if that lag?
No, that is what I need to do, and just like kind of compare.
Because that'd be weird. Because I know that the like PS1 games, when I go back and try to play them, like, even though it's my favorite console, a lot of them don't age very well because they're really clunky, like early 3D games.
Yeah, maybe it's like this like Mandela effect that I have, where it's just like, oh yeah, it was so good when I was a kid, just because
at the time
like, it was so
responsive to you at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now I'm like older. I'm just like, wait, I'm so used to all these other games being way more responsive.
I wonder, but that would be interesting. Maybe with the remaster, it's not optimized well. I mean, it is possible. I haven't played. I was going to bring up Crash Team Racing. That game, did you ever play Diddy Kong Racing on the 64?
No, I played Mario Kart and like that, but I don't think I ever played Diddy Kong Racing.
So Mario Kart is the most
definitely by far the most popular, well-known kart racer. It's the OG.
Yeah.
It created the genre.
Number
All
one.
props. But I think Crash Team Racing, at least in that era, I haven't played any of the modern Mario Karts. It was the best out of all of them because first Diddy Kong Racing came along and took the Mario Kart Racing formula, remixed it, and they added an overworld. Like, you remember Donkey Kong Country, when you're not in your level, there'd be like a map and you could go.
Yeah.
So Diddy Kong Racing, you would race around like an overworld to get to the races. And that
Okay.
overworld had like secrets you would unlock and hidden passages. So it was kind of like, and then Crash Team Racing did the same thing, but took that even farther. And so at the time I played all three, and I'm like, Crash, it was like a trilogy. There was Mario Kart,
Yeah.
Diddy Kong, and then Crash took that formula. And I thought that was the funnest kart racer at the time. And I know that I'm not the only one, because when people start talking about the remaster, some people online were losing their shit.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh my God, Crash Team Racing! I thought they'd never remaster it.
I
Like, oh.
never expected that. And then they have a new Crash coming out this year. Like, there's
Yeah.
like rumors about it, and I'm just like, fuck, it'd be so sick to have
Like a new racer Crash or a regular Crash?
brand new like regular Crash. I assume so.
That'd be
anyways.
badass.
But like they're bringing that, like they're making a new one of those, and everyone's like freaking out about it. But yeah, but there was two other games I remember being really pivotal or like monumental, like in my childhood, and that was Driver. If you remember Driver.
Yes, you had to do stunts for movies.
Yeah. The first one was like stunts for movies, and then the second one was like, what was it? I think it was like the same thing. And then Driver 3, it was more so like you're doing like these like heist missions type of thing. It was more like GTA style.
More GTA style.
But-
I remember Driver, I might have been one or two, they were on the PS1, had a video mode. Early,
Yeah,
And I remember
you
it
could
being
do it like the camera. Like
you could move the
direct-
camera, set the angle up, and at the time that was like, I wasted so many hours because I thought it looked so cool.
Yeah, like doing
Driver
the
was awesome.
stunts and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Driver and Dance Dance Revolution.
Dance Dance Revolution.
I remember.
Did you have the pad at home?
Yeah, I
shit.
had two pads, and so like me and my sister would do it. But like I used to go over to like my buddy's house, and he had it, and that was like where I first actually played it. And I found like a lot of cool, just like trance stuff and like weird music that way too. And so with that, like I was like, I gotta get this at home. And then as that kind of died out, was when Guitar Hero was showing up, and then like that was like pretty much the end, it seemed, of like all like the music related games. But yeah, like so many good games on like the PlayStation 1, and there's more probably that I can't even think of, but I remember playing so many games all the time.
Did you
PS1.
play any RPGs on PS1?
No, I played a little bit of Final Fantasy VII because my friend was really into it, but I personally, at the time, I was like, no, I like the more action-packed stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, because it was so slow, but now I actually have the Final Fantasy VII. It's not like a remake, but I think they just took the game and like imported it into the Switch. Mm-hmm. And so I have it on the Switch, and I've been playing it, and it's like,
How far into it on the Switch are you? Where are you at?
It's like right after like the person dies in the castle. I mean, I don't know hardly anything. It's been a while since I played it, but it was like they're like in the castle, and like that girl gets taken, I think, and they like go back out of it, and what is it? Like they're like helping that one girl like with their mom, and like
Oh yeah, I know.
like up in the bedroom and stuff like that, and then they leave with her, and I remember like going like over like these trains, and you have to like,
so
go
you're
across the train.
You're towards the end of the Midgar section, which is like, so you're like 1/4 through.
I was gonna say, yeah, I don't remember getting too far into
Yeah.
it, but yeah.
So the game really opens up. The remake, the Final Fantasy VII remake, coming out in March. Which, holy shit, it's almost March.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the only what they call the Midgar portion of the game. So you're inside. The very first portion of the game, you stay in that giant city that has the floating plates and the reactors that you try to bomb. Like you're only in that city for a long time, and then there's a certain things that happen in the story, and you actually get to leave, and then it opens up, and there's a big world map, like a 3D world map, and it's like a traditional RPG where you can cruise on this world map, and there's different locations.
Oh,
and
sick.
You get an airship and a submarine, and And so you're like close to the game, like totally opening up.
Dang.
I would play some more and then kind of
Yeah.
see how you like it once it opens up.
Yeah, definitely need to go and finish it. But I mean, like, I've heard so much about that game being like such like a monumental game,
It was.
and I'm just like, all right, I need to like see what this
I don't
is
know
all
if it
about.
holds up. That's why they're going to probably remake it. There is a way you can mod it pretty extensively on the PC and like replace all the backgrounds, and it can look a little bit better, but still plays like an old game. I don't know. I played it once through since the first 2 times I played it as a kid, and it was good, but it didn't. It was just partially, I think, part of the magic of that game. Oh no, I'm going to shit on Final Fantasy VII. There's people here that are going to lose their mind. You know what?
They're like standing up right now, like, say it.
I
say
think
it.
it is a great game, but it is not the GOAT of RPGs. It was the first game of 3 that Square made for the PS1, and it was revolutionary. But I think the following 2 games are actually better games. But at the time,
8 and 9.
8 and 9, yeah. I like, and a lot of people, the
People
Final
say
Fantasy,
that like 9 is just as good as 7, if not better.
I think
mean,
it's
it's definitely
better.
like a debatable thing from like what I've heard.
I remember thinking the art style and the aesthetics of 7 is cooler than 9, but then everything else about 9, like I think the world and the aesthetic and the lore of 7 is probably the coolest.
Yeah.
Second coolest. I think that world of 8 is cool, but it plays like it's just the most clunky. The models when you're
Yeah.
like actually on the map are really clunky and blocky. The writing has bad translation. It was the first game. It's a good game, and it was mind-blowing at the time. The first 3D sort of RPG. The idea of pre-rendered backgrounds where you have a 3D blocky character, but the background is just actually 2D was kind of similar to that Donkey Kong thing, right? People had seen what they did with Donkey Kong on the SNES. Like, we're going to use supercomputers to create this awesome image, and then we're going to just make that image like a flat, compress it down, and then feed the image to the console because the image is static.
And it's not taking up as much like memory too, I would imagine.
Yeah, memory. And so what they did on Final Fantasy VII is like they just had, the handful of characters that were 3D and move around. Those were the only things that were in actual 3D. The backgrounds are 2D images that were rendered by supercomputers. And so they didn't have to worry about making the game run. Like, they could just make the background as dope looking as they want,
And then
render it
just-
out, and
yeah.
just slap it, and then put their 3D characters on top of it. And they had to do some other stuff. And at the time, that was like, I couldn't believe the graphics, right? So I
Right.
think that's part of the magic of why that game is so legendary.
Yeah, kind of like with like the Diddy Kong or Donkey Kong Country for
Yes, yeah.
the same thing. Like, it was just like looked so
But Donkey
good.
Kong Country's a really solid game.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, I think I should have sit on it, but it doesn't surprise me that you played to a certain point in Final Fantasy VII and it kind of slowed down, and you stopped playing, and then like a lot of the details are forgettable because the game doesn't do a very good job of explaining like the world and the lore to it. Back when I was 13 when it came out, I had all the time in the world to sit and think about and figure how, like, you know what I mean?
Like how
I
it
don't
all
know.
worked out.
It would be hard to play that game as an adult, which is sad because you miss out on the magic
Yeah.
of what that
and-
game was. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, it's fun to play now for me, but I think I'm not connecting with it because I didn't experience like that magic growing up. Like, it's still, I definitely see the appeal to it.
Yeah.
Because it looks really dope, like just as is. And so, I mean, I'm sure the remake will be insane when it comes out too.
It's gonna be. Have you seen footage of the remake?
Yeah, it looks really awesome.
That's some dope shit.
Yeah.
I'm really, really stoked for that. On PS1, so puzzle games. Did you ever play this game? There was this one puzzle game I've asked a few guests about, and I haven't bothered to Google it yet, which I should. It's like a series of blocks, like 3 or 4 blocks, and they roll towards you, and you're like a little guy, and you have to like match blocks up, and then it tests your the pitch of the game was it would tell you what your IQ was for that level. And the better you played, and it would like track you and tell you your IQ score over time. Do you remember what that was, or ever heard of it?
No.
Damn it! I think it was like an obscure game that I somehow.
Like, I'm trying to think. I mean, I didn't play any puzzly games like that off the top of my head, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to think of what are some other heavy hitters on PS1. So you didn't do the RPGs. You did Crash, and damn, everything I know on PS1 is like super super nerdy and niche.
Yeah.
And RPGs really that was my bread and butter. I went deep down that rabbit hole.
Down the RPG rabbit hole.
I went balls to the wall in the JRPGs back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember. Oh, another game I did play was Twisted Metal. You remember that?
Twisted Metal.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I used to play that a bunch. I'm trying to think of like what else. Oh, Oddworld too.
Oddworld, yes.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
that was another one. That was a PS1 that used the same sort of technology concept as Donkey Kong, but now it was on the PS1 instead of the SNES, which means they didn't have to compress those images. They had more bandwidth. And so it had amazing graphics at the time. I remember the opening cinema for Oddworld. Do you remember that? He's like working, hi, I'm Abe, and I'm a Gunganglin, and he's like mopping the floor, and it's like this whole world of these squid dudes that are killing other animals and turning them into food. And then he realizes the new product that, Rupture Farms. I found out Rupture Farms was killing all the, whatever they're called, Gungans or something. Oh, that's Star Wars. But he finds out that the new product is his people, like his race. And then the whole game is you got to save all those people. And that's definitely a puzzle game, not an action game. Yeah.
It was more like it was like a puzzle game, but like, again, it like immersed you in this like bizarre world.
This bizarro. Yeah, that was one of the more creative. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like wacky. Or did you play Earthworm Jim?
That sounds so familiar.
You ever played Earthworm Jim?
I feel like I did. That sounds so familiar.
You'd like Earthworm Jim, I think. I think that game has aged well. That's a Super Nintendo or Genesis, so yeah, you would have been a little too young. Yeah, PS1 is kind of 64. Did you have a 64 after PS1?
No. What did I have? After that, I had a PS2, but I also remember playing. My buddy had a Dreamcast.
Yes.
And so I play like what was it, Taxi Driver or whatever?
Taxi, yeah, I think it's Taxi Driver.
Super Taxi, something
Super
like
Taxi.
So I played
Crazy Taxi.
Crazy Taxi.
Crazy Taxi.
Duh. Yeah, Crazy Taxi, and some Sonic game. I don't remember like what it was called.
Sonic Adventure, probably. I think there was two like 3D Sonics, like true 3D Sonics on Dreamcast. Yeah, Dreamcast is a interesting. Do you know much about Dreamcast? What happened to it?
I remember like it didn't. It would have like a super short life, basically.
Super short lifespan, but it also, I think, up until the Wii, it was the fastest selling console.
Yeah.
Like it launched amazing.
I remember the controllers were so dope.
They were dope, and you had that like memory card that was slot in it, and you could see the screen. Yeah, it sold really, really well, and then it died out really fast because of basically some things out of Sega's control, some bad decisions in their control. There's people who have like done whole documentaries on the rise and fall of the Dreamcast because it's really odd for something to be that successful and then just die that fast.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's made the Dreamcast a very like that PS1 is basically like the magic console for me. Everyone has that one that like usually whatever you have between like 12 and 17, 12 and 18, that's going to be. It's same thing with music. Like whatever whatever bands you're worshiping, it's like especially if you're a male, that age, like maybe 11 to 18.
That's where everything
is forms.
Yeah,
it forms your taste.
Yeah, like I just remember just devouring so many games, and then I kind of like stepped away from games and just like started devouring music.
Yeah.
But there was another game I remember that Tony Hawk and like Dave Mirra. Like I remember playing both of those and being obsessed with like Tony Hawk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like just playing all of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, like games like that, or Burnout on PS2.
Yeah, Burnout.
And like
that's a good one. That franchise is still going. They released one not too long ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Still? That's crazy.
Burnout. They went to the city model. Like this was a while ago. Probably like original Xbox, maybe Xbox 360. I have the PC version. It's called Burnout Paradise.
Okay, I've heard of it.
It's like
I feel like that's like an older one.
I think it's pretty old. I think it's like original Xbox, maybe 360. But it has like an overworld. Instead of just like playing races, you actually drive in like a GTA-esque type city and then you like go to a point and the race starts from there. Which
Yeah.
at the time, all the previous Burnout games were just like pick a track
And you
or like
play it.
levels, and that was a big deal. It blew my mind. Speaking of racing games, on the PS1, did you ever play Ridge Racer?
That sounds really familiar too.
Ah.
I was gonna say I played Need for Speed and Midnight Club, like Need for Speed Underground 1 and 2 were super huge games for me, and Midnight Club 3, just because of like again.
So you went all into the racing, yeah.
Yeah, but a big part of it was because of the music. Like that was how I found like a lot of like hip hop and like rap and all that stuff. But also, yeah, just like driving around, like it's like late at night,
Yeah.
and you're like going and like how you said in Burnout Paradise, you drive up to these like circles and you just like enter the race. Like that's how I remember it being for Midnight Club 3, and I think Underground as well.
I've played. I've either played Midnight, one of the Midnights, or I've played Underground, one of the two. But now remember, like you can like pull up to a car and
Yeah.
like flash your lights or something to initiate
The race.
a race, and then it'll like go into race mode. That was a cool idea back in the day when they started implementing the open world elements into racing games, which goes back to Diddy Kong Racing was the first I remember doing it, but then Crash Team, and then it went away. That's interesting. Now I think about it real time. Like they had done the open world thing on 64
Yeah.
and PS1, and then it kind of stopped, and then even Need for Speed. I don't think.
Need for Speed doesn't do it anymore. I think the last one I remember playing was like Carbon, and it was okay, but it was like open world, and it like loaded levels. But I feel like with these newer games, they kind of like stopped doing it, is just because it takes so long to load. But at the same time, I remember them loading back in the open world games. So I don't know why they're like doing that now, but that's like what I loved about it. And like, point in case GTA, how it's just open world and you can literally like seamlessly transition from like just driving around with nothing to do and just jumping straight into a mission.
Yeah.
And so I think, they definitely did it best, but I wish other racing games like that would still go and implement that.
I think have you played The Crew? I haven't played it, but it's a PS4 game.
I've heard the name. I think maybe Christian might have played it, but I never got into like any of the other ones. There was like some other one, like Just Drive or I don't know, something else that was like a copycat of GTA.
Yeah.
Around like when Xbox first came. Oh, Saints Row.
Saints Row. Yeah.
That's what it was.
There's a handful of Saints Rows now.
Yeah, they ended up becoming pretty successful, but I remember like not being into it because I was like, oh, this is basically just GTA.
Yeah.
Like, why do I care?
It was.
But
yeah. That's so you went PS1, PS2, it sounds like. Did you have like friends that had a 64?
Yeah, so I remember playing Banjo-Tooie or Banjo-Kazooie, whatever it was.
Banjo-Kazooie, yeah.
And so I remember playing that on 64. What else? Like Wave Racer.
Yes.
And
Wave Racer. That was a big one. Wave Racer, the wave technology. I've said this like 1,000 times already, but I remember just like that's one of the. I saw this meme. We backtrack. I saw this meme the other day that says like it's 1998. You just got GoldenEye.
I remember GoldenEye too.
Yeah, you just got GoldenEye. You have 4 controllers. Pizza's on the way, and your friends are here, and you also have 4 Rumble Packs. You don't know this, but this is as good as life is ever gonna get. And I think about that, like those powerful memories. That's kind of how Wave Racer was for me. I got a 64 late because I had a PS1. Some games had already come out, and I begged, and I finally got one. I got it Christmas morning, and the only game I had, and that first was Wave Racer.
Yeah.
So like, there's just something about that magic. That game, the music, that opening, I think it's called Dolphin Park. Do you remember like the training area?
Yeah.
And it's like the water's like crystal blue, like Bahamas type shit, and the wave techno. I didn't think it was possible to have water that looked that good, and the physics, like
how it like bounced off the waves.
Yeah, because if you ever go into the water, like in any GTA games, like PS2 games, or even GTA, like Jet Moto was on PS1, which was like a hovercraft, and there was water, and the water was just like this flat blue texture. Then they would like run some like random, and it just didn't look like water or behave like water at all. And up to that point, I think I've talked about this with other guests. There's like no Wave Racer came out of nowhere and was like, "Oh, you guys think you can do water? Hold my beer, bitch. We're gonna do water like nobody's doing water." And that was even at the time, like kids who didn't even have 64s were like, it was like people talk about at school, like, "Have you fucking seen Wave Racer, dude? The water." Everyone was talking about the water, like, "Oh my god, the water!"
It looks like so good,
so good for the time.
And I remember like going to like arcades, and then there was like House of the Dead, and then there was Wave Racer, and just like sitting there and just playing that, and I was like, whoa, this is so sick, like how it just like so smoothly just like bounces off the water.
You actually move and the waves feel like they hit you and then you react. The physics felt convincing. Yeah, what other games had. There was an arcade game that was, I think, on the Dreamcast as well, called Hydro Thunder.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. That one had good water too, but that came later. But that had really good water as well. Dreamcast had a ton of good racing games because Sega was putting out like Daytona. Yeah, they were always putting out racing games, and they would come to the Dreamcast.
Yeah, funny story about Wave Racer. Like so how I got really into like actually making music was Owl City, and so Owl City had this side project called Port Blue, and Port Blue was like
one of the levels on Wave Racer. Yeah.
And so it was all just like music that was kind of like mimicking that in a way.
Mimicking Wave Racer's
like soundtrack. Yeah. Okay. Just like he said, it was like music for like the elevator and like lounges and airports and like coffee bars and all that stuff. And so it was like ended up becoming how I fell in love with ambient music was because of that. And then there was a friend of his that started a group called Dolphin Park. And so they made like shoegaze music. And so I was just like diving into like ambient and shoegaze at the time. I was like 16, 17 and just being like, oh, and I found out like that was like where like all that inspiration came from was from Wave Racer. And so
and then there's also Wave Racer, the producer.
Oh yeah,
whose name is, and he makes Nintendo-y kind of happy, which is obviously like an homage to the Nintendo 64 and probably the game Wave Racer. He just he disappeared for a while, and then all of a sudden put out like 2 tracks and did a bunch of podcasts, and basically said he had like a panic attack.
Oh, he did podcasts?
Yeah, he's done a couple podcasts. He basically he blew up really quick, right? And then you remember everyone started making, myself included, like I was already playing around with video game. I remember thinking, fucking Wave Racer. Like I was trying to make this shit already. Now he's blowing up, stole my thunder. But I mean, I loved his shit. I was like, this is exactly like kind of what I've been trying to make. And then that trended for a little bit. It was a pretty short trend. But and then he's like, I didn't see him anymore and I kind of forgot that I had forgot about him. And then he showed up, like a podcast or a YouTube video showed up on my social feeds. I checked it out, and it was like Wave Racer is putting out his first new song in like 4 years or something like that. And here's an interview, and I ended up reading it or watching it. Can't remember. I ended up watching a bunch of shit about it later. But essentially, he had a mental breakdown and was like, I can't handle being like famous. I can't handle playing shows. He's like this kind of, and he had basically dealt with all of it, got it all on lockdown, and then he came back and he did a new album or EP, and it's fucking fire.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's like much more like poppy with like the vocals,
so refined.
It's really like lush sounding.
Yeah, and I'm like, God damn, he's a genius. It like takes 5 years off or 4, whatever long it was.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure he was creating during that time, but
still, like having that break and just kind of like gathering all your thoughts and being like, okay, this is what it's like. Do I want to continue with this? I, especially right when like the SoundCloud world was blowing up, like there were so many quote unquote SoundCloud producers that were blowing up because of that whole wave. And they were just like kids, like young people. And so many of them like got like depression or like just overwhelmed and being like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Like they go, like obviously like they come in and they're like, yo, like I want to make beats. That sounds fun. And then like you see everything and you're like, whoa.
You see behind the curtain a little bit.
This is gnarly.
Yeah.
And so like it's cool seeing people who, like it feels like so many of like my favorite musicians from that era have just like disappeared. But I've been seeing like more and more of them are coming back, like how Tonight just came back and like dropped an EP.
Yeah.
And so like it's cool to see that like they're working through that. They're still making music. They still like just want to release stuff. And it's like, dang, all right. So even though it's shitty for a second, there's still hope, because like that was like how I felt too. Like kind of seeing that other side, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And so then like feeling like really shitty and being like, dang, like I had so much hope that this was going to be like my thing. And now like seeing it, you're just like,
I don't know if I want this. I don't know if I want
this anymore.
Yeah.
And then like now I mean like it's become such like a talked about thing about like musicians on the road and like anxiety and depression and all that stuff, and how to deal with like mental illness and stuff like that. So like it's cool to see like people are like still like, I want to do music, but they're like working through it and they're successfully doing it. And so that's like giving me more hope, like, okay, they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, I mean, especially it's like a catch-22, because a lot of like I've seen I've seen a pattern where it seems like for a lot of people, the more creative you are, like the more natural creativity or even developed creativity, the more gifted you are in a way. Oftentimes, the flip side of that is the more tortured you can also be.
Yeah.
And then combine that with, so you have someone who's really gifted, they start blowing up on SoundCloud because, you know, they have a knack for it. They make some dope shit, it blows up, and then you put them, you know, what I would call like the underground circuit or the up and coming circuit touring, which is if anyone has tried to be in a band, they've tried to be a producer or a DJ, which you guys have done that and moved on way past, but I did enough of it too. It's like, dude, when you're at the bottom coming up, that's not what I would say mentally, it's not conditions that are conducive to maintaining a positive mental health attitude.
Yeah, you're just like, dude.
You're in the grungiest, most, like you said, disorganized, the culture, like you rub shoulders with a lot of people whose lives are in just shambles.
Just messy people.
Yeah.
And you're just like, is this all it is? But I mean, like, granted, like you're just starting.
Yeah.
But and like sometimes, you know, you meet really cool people in those situations too. But especially like just being in like those dingy like small clubs or bars, you're just like, this isn't like what I signed up for. But
and it's so depressing to play for no one, and no one cares, and like you already deal with it, and you're already sensitive about your music and whether people like it, and you're playing show after show and no one cares, and it's not cool, and
you're like, where's the end?
And then you're just running across crazy homeless drug addict people that are chasing you and threatening you, and you don't know where you're at, and they put you up in a hotel, and there's literally like cigarette butts and needles in the fucking hotel, and you're like, what am I doing? I got booked in Denver once, and they put me up in the hotel right across from the venue, but it's in some part of Denver, I guess it's ghetto. And when I walked in, the hotel room said, please do not extinguish your cigarette butts on the wall. It was a plaque, like mounted on the wall. I'm like, they've had such a bad problem with people putting out their cigs on the wall, smoking in the room, that they have to put a plaque up. I'm like,
I think I know the place.
I think did you come with me that time?
Yeah, we stayed there with you when you played, but also we played a show, I think like 2 years ago, and we stayed in the exact same hotel, and there was like blood on like something. Like it was just like so disgusting there. And, like I opened up the fridge, and someone like left literally like all their like groceries in there, and there was like rotting rice and stuff like that, and I was like,
yeah, man.
I think, and then like when I was there, I was like, wait, I'm pretty sure I stayed here with Cade, and I remember
I think I do remember you.
I slept on the floor, and like our other buddy Dante came,
yes,
and he slept on the floor, and like Christian was like sleeping in the corner.
I do remember that. Yeah, I played at the Meadowlark.
Yeah, with Baby Shoe.
That was with Baby Shoe, and that was also the time you guys must have been there. I was gonna say the next part about the hotel is, do you remember the room over being crack addicts?
I think so. I just remember it being the worst hotel.
Yeah, they offered me crack, and they were like out on the thing next, like, hey man, like we got I forgot what the lingo they used, but I knew what they were talking about, and we were like, someone else was on the balcony with me, and we just like, oh yeah, man, that's cool. We're anyway. It was like walk back in the room and shut the door, and they were just there for the night. Like that was just their place to get high and hang for the night. And I just remember thinking, and I was probably I'm older than you. I don't remember how old I was, but I had the same thought every musician has. I'm 29 or 30 years old, and here I am staying in this crack addict hotel.
Yeah.
I spent $400 to come here and make $300, and like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, and you're just like, dang. And then you have like friends who are just like, yeah, I just bought a house, I'm getting married, and I'm just like, man, did I fuck up?
Did I fuck up by taking this path?
But like choosing this path. And so like that really like fucks with you mentally, because like, you know, if you want a family and you want all of that, and like you're hoping to achieve that from music or any art for that matter, it's like, it's really hard to like think about. Like when I first started, luckily, you know, I was single and didn't really have much thought of like, oh, I need to get a girlfriend or whatever, like, and like I want to start a family and all that. And so like being able to just do that by yourself, getting started, I think is good, because then you don't really have anyone else to worry about. Like you can just spend, you know, 18 hours a day or however long, multiple days, every day if you must, just like making music. Or like say you have a day job and you're like, okay, I'm coming home doing nothing but music.
All my free time is music. Yeah,
exactly. Like you don't have to go and like worry about like a significant other or like raising a family and all that stuff too. Like being able to like balance all of that, plus like school, if you're going to school too, like that just seems so much.
Music's definitely one of those things that if you're going to do it, you got to go all in. But what's scary about it is if you going all in is not a guarantee.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a requirement. If you don't go all in, excuse me, then your chance of success is zero.
Yeah.
So
and so then you just like grow or like go through life and you're like, dang, I never even tried. And you just like have like that regret of just like never trying.
I think you should definitely, when you're young, I think I heard Gary Vee, because Omar loves Gary Vee, he's always posting Gary Vee shit, said something along the lines of, when you're young, just take the big risk.
Yeah.
And go, because like you'll never regret it and you'll learn from it. And when you're older, you can't take risks.
Yeah, exactly.
So whatever you want, whatever risks, like do it in your 20s and go all out and see if you can hack it. And if you can't, you can. Dude, there'll always be someone who'll give you a day job.
Yeah, there's always other options. And like, like no one wants to work, but I mean, like you find something that you love to do, and you're like, hey, this is fun. I like doing this. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter like what it is. And so, yeah, exactly. Like you don't want to die. Like I remember being stubborn when I was like even like 6 years ago, and just being like, no, I don't want to get a job, and I don't want to put in the effort for whatever else, and I just want to make music. But I was making really like weird niche music, and so no one gave a shit. And it was just like, all right, this is like, I'm at the bottom of the barrel right now. Like I have overdraft fees in my account. I'm jobless. I'm living off of food stamps, and I was just like, no,
you got to figure something out.
I need to do something else in life instead of like.
I remember when you and Christian got that apartment in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
that was like a big move for both of you, which I think helped a lot.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it helped a ton, just like being around each other and not having many other priorities at the time. I mean, now like we both have our own kind of like separate lives and do our own thing, but we like at that time, like that definitely helped, just like making all that music together.
Well, you could just get down and neither one of you, like we can both just grind.
Yeah. And instead of like, basically just like being there and just from as soon as you wake up to as soon as you go to sleep, just grinding. So that was, I mean, it was a shitty experience, but also it was cool because
the apartment
like,
was, it was, I mean, every time I visited you guys seemed like you're doing all right. But yeah, it was one of those, the cheapest apartment you can find.
Yeah, it was horrible. There was like the little, what is it, like the ear wigs or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they would always show up, and there was like leaks in like the windowsills, and just so much. And there was like crack neighbors there too. So we're just like, dang, like we're always just like surrounded by crackheads at work, at doing music, at
But
home.
you were close to what's that restaurant? Red Iguana.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
close to that, which is doesn't make up for it, but damn, that's a good restaurant.
Red Iguana is awesome though.
It's the shit. Have you guys done any video game music? Has anyone approached you to do video game stuff?
We haven't done video game music yet. I remember like Omar saying he got like the Damn Son catalog in some skating game that was on like Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, he got Damn Son involved in a skating game, and it has the Damn Son logo on some of like the in-game billboards.
Yeah.
And I think
I remember him telling me that.
Yeah, I think they took some tracks too.
Yeah. I don't know. I think maybe they took one of ours, but I remember him saying that like, yeah, he's like, yeah, like I donated basically to this campaign, and for donating you would be a part of the game basically.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what the name was or if it came out or anything like that, but I guess.
So there might be a track in a video game out there.
Yeah, exactly.
But no one's approached you, like, or your manager hasn't, like, have you guys, what's the word, explored doing video game music? I know Rob has done some, I talked to Rob recently, and he's climbing that ladder. He's been getting a lot of outsourced work. So, like, whoever's been hired to do the soundtrack for a game will then a lot of times outsource some of like the more, like bitch labor that we got to go through and clean up all these samples and make sure they hit these certain, because the game makers will provide, from what I understand, like certain technical details. All your sound effects that you design need to be in between this frequency range, need to be at this dB in order to fit into the mix for the audio engine or whatever. So I know Rob's been doing a lot of that work.
That's cool. He's doing that.
I think you guys could kill it. The reason why I bring that up is every time I fantasize about the video game I'm never going to make, but I build the world and lore in my mind. I imagine like you guys and some other artists I like doing the music.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know both of us would love to do like a video game soundtrack. Like we did a short film soundtrack for someone. It's not out yet, but I guess it's been hitting a lot of festivals. And so this guy, he was in New York, but he just moved back to, I think he's in Taiwan now. And so he like entered in this film into a bunch of festivals, and I personally would love to do like more stuff like that, just like more like picture based stuff. And even like we've done a lot of like sync work. We haven't landed anything yet, unfortunately, but just doing even like that, just like, hey, like we need this type of pacing, these types of sounds. And it's like how you said, it's like bitch work, like super technical and specific. Like we need a full dope idea in 24 hours, go. And you're just like, holy shit. And you have to just like drop everything.
And just go for it.
And just try and make it happen. And so, I mean, like, I don't think there's ever been once where we have been like, we have no idea like what we're doing. Because there was like one where we made like a rock song for it. And like none of us really play guitar or drums or anything like that. And so we like made a rock song. And it's like, hey, if it doesn't land, at least we tried it. And so it kind of like pushes your abilities those
makes
ways
your creative
too.
chops get better.
And also just dealing with pressure better too. So like I like doing those projects, and I think Christian does too. And like like I like making music and playing shows, but I definitely think sooner or later I'd like to switch over to just the picture side. And like doing like video games and like stuff like that. I think that'd be really cool.
Oh, I was going to tell you, I think I told Christian this. I had, do you remember Levitate? He's Omar's friend.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast like 2 episodes. Awesome dude. Shout out to Levitate. He was, said he remembered meeting you guys, and we were talking about how you guys have some similarities in your tone, kind of like the darker, heavier side on some of your, and he said, oh, dude, X and G, a lot of the guys I roll with and people I talk to in the scene consider X and G's the absolute best producers in the entire scene.
That's crazy.
And he's like, it's very, like I said, I think you guys have like a really, it may not be huge, but like I said, again, you're on the Tom York end of the spectrum. And I think you guys should keep doing what you're doing, because I mean, it was interesting. He knew I knew you guys, but like, I don't think he knew I was friends with you. He just knew Omar and Damn Son, and I was somehow loosely connected to Omar. So I know he wasn't just saying that like, because, oh, they're your friends or something. I think I brought X and G up. Like, oh, you know X and G, right? Omar's friends. He's like, oh yeah. Yeah, they're like considered the best producers on the scene by a lot of people I know, like the absolute best. Said it like, no, I'm like, wow. So, and he wants to collab with you guys. I gave him Christian's number.
Nice.
And I'm like, I'm sure they'll say yes. I love his tunes, and I think you guys would do a cool collab. So there, Connor, here's my official, I did it.
No, yeah, I'd be super down to collab.
I think his name's Connor. If I got your name wrong, Connor, or not Connor, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure his name's Connor.
No, yeah, I'm pretty
It's
sure
Connor,
it is
yeah.
too.
I just call him Levitate.
I remember meeting him in Seattle, and I have like another friend who's friends with him too, and yeah, like I remember like talking to him a couple of times on Twitter. I haven't had too much interaction with him, and in hindsight, we don't really interact with too many artists. Like there's a couple of people that we've become close to, but I mean even some of them, like it all just seems to be like who you like hang around with. Like we used to be like really close with like and even like
censorship and secrets.
Like I don't want to say anything too soon, but I stopped doing music.
Not doing music?
I don't think anymore.
Oh.
So I mean, you might have to edit that out because I don't know if I can say that. But
I can edit that out.
But
break. Anyway.
Break. But yeah. So like and then like and now most recently we met this guy. He goes by 1788L. I can't say his name, but he is. He's a
the plot thickens.
The plot thickens, yeah. But he's a really cool guy, and so we've been hanging out with him and making some music, and he's super awesome. Like he likes the really like polyrhythmic type of like. What's that band?
Tool?
No, not Tool.
The polyrhythm band? Is that Tool you speak of?
No. Oh man, it's Hail the Sun.
Hail the Sun.
Hail the Sun. They're more on like the
prog side.
Like kind of prog. It's like more like Dance Gavin Dance and Circus Survive.
Okay.
But
emo prog.
More technical than they already are.
Yeah. So more technical Dance Gavin Dance or Seosin.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's almost like that meets like math rock, prog rock type of stuff. And so it was really cool because like the voice reminded me a lot of what's his name, Anthony Green?
Yeah.
From Circus Survive, and just like the technical stuff about it reminded me of like what's that band? It's like right on the tip of my tongue, like super like progressive band. Between the Buried and Me.
Okay, yeah.
And so they're kind of like that, but I remember he like showed us them, and super cool band. Definitely think you should check them out. Hail the Sun.
Hail the Sun. That sounds like right up my alley. So I tell people I like metal. I just say metal because the average person, when they hear the music I listen to, will just probably say it's rock or metal because they're not into like music terminology. But if a metalhead, like a true metalhead, was like, you calling that metal? That's not metal, bitch. That's prog. Yeah, I'm like, I like prog groups that mix in all of those different. They take a little bit of metal and they do the prog thing too. They take a little bit of math rock, they do the prog thing too. They take a little bit of grunge and like they mix it up. Because to me, that's what prog is. It's like you're taking like all these influences and then mixing them around, doing cool shit with them.
Yeah, and that was like what I really got into like towards the end of like my metal days was like really progressive technical stuff like Periphery and like Animals as Leaders and like there's this one band called the Contortionists, which is like one of like my favorites.
They're awesome too.
And
Periphery, I think it's Periphery or Contortionist. Jason Richardson, which one does he play for?
Wasn't he in Periphery? He wasn't Born of Osiris.
Born of Osiris.
He might have switched to another band. I might have been Periphery actually. I remember he like.
I can't remember who it was, but he did a solo album with like a YouTube drummer kid that blew up on YouTube doing drum covers. He's fucking good at drums.
Dang.
And it's just him and this amazing drummer, and they put out I think you'd like it. It's a little experiment, like weird sometimes, which is why I think you like it, but. It reminds me of the Contortionist, Between the Bird and Me, and like all of that, but a little bit more proggy, like a little more show off, where instead of just being like heavy,
almost like Chon. You know Chon?
Yeah, I like Chon, Chon. Yeah, definitely way harder than them. Chon's guitar tones are way more like smooth.
Yeah, just like buttery.
Yeah, this is like more like Chon, but everything is like that classic, I don't know, Mesa Boogie guitar, like.
Okay, yeah. Like, oh man, who was like, there was some band. Oh, Meshuggah. You know Meshuggah?
Meshuggah, yeah.
Yeah, like
Those dudes
they're
are
like one,
heavy.
like the first ones to like do that type of like the Mesa Boogie shit.
Yeah, Mega Sugar or Mega Sugar. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Meshuggah, yeah.
Meshuggah.
I just think of like Meshuggah.
Meth Sugar.
Yeah.
What's
Meshuggah.
if you could do the soundtrack for any game, like retro, like travel in time,
Any game.
what game would it be?
Oh, that is a good question. I think one that could be fun to do would be like Akuji the Heartless or like Oddworld, just because they're so like their worlds are so like dystopian and like weird.
Yeah.
And like
What's Akuji the Heartless? That's not ringing a bell.
Akuji the Heartless, it was some game I played, and it was like you're like this guy, and you had like your heart's taken out by like your brother or something like that, and you're like on like this quest to just basically like get your heart back or something
What
like
console was it for?
that. PS1.
PS1?
Yeah.
Akuji the Heart. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. And so it was like kind of like Prince of Persia. Like it was like that same type of like format where you're just like doing certain like jumps and stuff, or like even like God of War, where you're just kind of like exploring this like world.
Yeah.
And just like going through, just trying to like, get to like your brother. And I think that's like how the premise is of like Prince of Persia and God of War and some other game that I played that was similar to that. But
or Oddworld. Yeah, Oddworld would definitely be. That's a fun world to try to make.
Oddworld,
music to.
I mean, the one game I think that I'm stoked on now. I mean, I don't know too much about it, but what I've seen looks really dope so far is Cyberpunk 2077.
Ooh, you made my pants tingle,
So-
dude. I'm so stoked for Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
That game, like, oh, that game. I don't even know where to start. I probably talk. Yeah, you talk. Otherwise, I won't shut up because I like that game so
Well,
much.
I actually want to know more about it because, like, I remember seeing the trailer and I just remember it was basically like GTA and what was that game where you could hack the phones?
Watch Dogs.
Yeah, it's like
I
a
can
combination
see
of that.
There's definitely that. So yeah, it's Cyberpunk is based off. So there's like the aesthetic kind of sci-fi label, which was called cyberpunk. Like it's a kind of a lot of people use that term to describe the aesthetics of, say, maybe like. Did you ever see the anime Ghost in the Shell?
Ghost in the Shell, The Matrix.
The Matrix. So Matrix maybe, but some people might call that style like cyberpunk.
Or I guess even like Final Fantasy VII. Would you call that like?
Yeah, there'd be a little cyberpunk in that. But cyberpunk initially is like a book or in a board game. And maybe I forget which one came first. It was like
Do you know about like steampunk? You know what that is?
steampunk is not like an official book, but it's the same idea, but everything's steam powered.
Okay.
Right, like steampunk is like, as far as aesthetics go, it's like pipes and rust and brick and.
I just remember like lots of people wearing like those like big weird masks with like the goggles.
Yeah.
Shit.
But cyberpunk is also, I want to say, I know it's a board game and a book. It's like this. There's a guy that actually wrote built the world like Tolkien built Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So it's kind of two. It's one. It can be loosely used as like a term to describe like a sci-fi type aesthetic, or it's an actual world called cyberpunk. And the game Cyberpunk 2077 is set in that world. It's like a sequel, sort of a sequel to the original book and the board game.
Gotcha.
And it has so like Watch Dogs. One of the things you can do is be a net runner, which is basically like a hacker. Everything's connected to the net. And in the world, it's like basically everyone can like augment themselves.
Which is crazy.
It's
crazy that that's like
badass.
becoming like an actual reality too.
And it's made by. Have you ever heard of a game called The Witcher?
Yeah.
The Witcher 3. It's on Netflix, by the way. The
Witcher, and they do Dark Souls?
No, that's from Software. That's also, but
Gotcha.
CD Projekt Red is the ones that made The Witcher. They did Witcher 1, 2, and 3. Witcher 3 was this massive success.
Yeah.
They got a bunch of money, and then they got contracted to do Cyberpunk. And one of the reasons I'm very, very stoked about it, which might be interesting to you, is they're kind of like, they're like the gamer studio. So I don't know if you hear, like, EA is like hated by everybody,
Right.
But they're huge and they own all these properties, so we have to buy their games anyway because they have a thing with Disney. So if there's going to be a Star Wars game, it's probably EA. You got to, if you want to play a Star Wars game, everyone fucking hates EA. They're like the cash cow. They've always trying to do microtransactions. That's like one end of the spectrum of what a lot of gamers consider like greedy mega game companies
I was gonna say,
don't care about the gamers.
Yeah, I remember like that huge outroar about it was like
Battlefront 2.
Yeah, like when that came out, like all the DLC was super expensive or something like that.
And like grinding and getting items. It was basically like pay to win, and they were just trying to milk people. That's one end of the spectrum. CD Projekt Red, the makers of Cyberpunk and The Witcher, are like the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Nice.
They never put DRM on their games, which is like, we don't care if you pirate it.
Really?
Because DRM can get in the way and make games, especially if you're playing on PC, depending on your configuration, there can be a lot of bugs that happen with DRM. They can make games run slower. They can make PCs run slower. So they don't do DRM. They always they don't do paid, like their DLCs are actually worth the money, and they're very like the opposite end of the spectrum. Gamers love them and buy their products because they actually don't do all the greedy shit that pisses gamers off. And they always put out good, actually they don't always put out good games. Witcher 1 and 2 are kind of janky games if you try to play them now.
I remember like Witcher 3.
Witcher 3 is amazing.
Like
one of the best games ever.
Yeah.
But when they got basically announced they were making Cyberpunk, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and at the time it was like my favorite genre, which is sci-fi, specifically Cyberpunk, now is going to be made by my favorite developer. So that game was first announced in 2013, I think, 14.
No, it wasn't.
It was just a CGI trailer. They didn't have any gameplay. They were like deep in pre-production. They weren't even. They announced it way too early. So I've been waiting for that game for like 7 years.
That's crazy.
And it's finally coming. So. Sorry, I had to spout off. You said Cyberpunk, and it was like,
no,
it's finally coming.
I mean, like, same as you. Like, I've always liked Cyberpunk aesthetic.
Yeah.
And then, like, seeing, like, Keanu Reeves is in it.
Oh,
and just, like, seeing just, like, the visual appearance of it, it looked really sick.
Badass. Levitate made a point that he doesn't, and I didn't argue with him, because I think he's way deeper into the world of aesthetics and design than I am.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't think Cyberpunk is actually Cyberpunk aesthetically. He's talking about the game. He's like, I think that's kind of like a cheesy sort of poppy, what's the word, like cliche way to visualize Cyberpunk, the concept of Cyberpunk.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I can see that. But they're paying homage to the original, and they're working directly with the author who basically created the world of Cyberpunk. He created the style, essentially, and the board game and the original books, and he consulted on the look of the game.
Yes.
So it's cliche Cyberpunk, but
it's also like the original.
That's what Cyberpunk started out as.
And it's the same thing with like anything else I want to say. Like, like someone goes and creates something, and it gets popularized by these more
in-depth
like aesthetics.
Yes.
Like same with like emo or scene or whatever.
Yes,
like it's like a very like probably like pretty like linear look. And then it's just like, oh no, you have to have your hair a certain way, and you gotta listen to a certain type of music and wear a certain type of pants and like all this shit. And like I mean I understand that and I support people doing that. But yeah, like when people go and like make an original idea and then it just gets skewed, it's like, okay, like what's the original and what's popular now?
What's been born from, what are the evolutions?
Yeah, exactly.
The evolutions. Yeah, and I actually agree with him. I don't love the look of the game. Like, I think there are way cooler Cyberpunk aesthetics out there than the aesthetic for the game.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with him there. Like, you're right. And, like, the stuff, he showed me a bunch of shit on Instagram and other Cinema 4D, because he's, like, deep down in that world now. And he showed me some dope shit. Like, that's a rabbit hole I don't know much about. So when I started going down, I'm like, like this... Just like the music world, the aesthetic, the 3D, the Photoshop, like even just within sci-fi itself, goes just as deep, right?
Oh, for sure.
Right, and so I think he's right. I don't think he said it was like the wrong Cyberpunk. I think he actually just said, I'm not into that that cliche style of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably a more commercialized or like more mainstream version.
It's a very mainstream game.
Yes,
Yeah.
because like they wanted to be successful, so they probably had to kind of like dial it back a bit. And so I mean, thinking about it now, I wouldn't be surprised if like cyberpunk becomes like the next big like fashion trend in some way.
Video games are a big moving force in culture now.
Yeah.
Much more than they were when we were kids. I've said this a few times. I haven't fact checked it, so if you're listening, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure it's right. It's either two things. The stat is either A, video games are bigger than both music as far as gross income generated worldwide, or maybe it's just the U.S., but more than movies and music. And I think I heard someone or a headline that said it's more than movies and music combined. I don't know if those are true, but the point is video games have gone from when we were younger to like, they were pretty, like a lot of kids played them, but I still got made fun of. There were a lot of kids that thought video games were dumb.
And like nerdy, like, oh, you're a nerd,
yeah,
you don't have no
nerdy.
life, all that
Very
stuff.
nerdy. But then somewhere around GoldenEye to Halo, and then Call of Duty for sure, is the first person shooter brought in even the most hardcore guys that were into sports or meatheads that are very anti-game. You could catch them playing GoldenEye or Halo, or definitely Call of Duty. And I think, and obviously other games like Uncharted, and there's some franchises that have really branched out. But now, it's not even, it's like everybody games.
Yeah, it's just become like a staple.
It's a staple,
and I was going to say, I think those stats are right, because like think about it, like there are podcasters, there's musicians, but the biggest thing that has popped up is streamers. Like the streaming world is fucking huge.
It's huge, yeah.
And like there's so much revenue from that, from like Twitch and the other ones too.
There's that new one, I think it's Max, that keeps, that's that new one, they keep stealing Twitch streamers for exclusive. Like they'll pay, that guy Ninja got paid some ludicrous amount of money to basically leave Twitch and go on this new platform.
Max.
I don't think it's called Max. Shit, what's it called?
Like, I'm trying to think of like the other ones. Like there's Twitch, and there's like, I can't think of any right
There's
now.
one other one that's making moves. I've been seeing
That's
in
like
headlines.
big, yeah.
And it's getting guys to come over. And I know Ninja, who's a Fortnite, like I think he's the most popular Fortnite streamer. I know he's one that has moved over. Oh, Mixer. I think it's called Mixer.
Oh, Mixler. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's called Mixer. He's like exclusive on Mixer now. There's definitely a battle going over for streaming.
The thing is, it's funny because like I remember using Mixer for it reminded me kind of like Tiny Chat, like when I would do like those online concerts.
Yeah.
And so like Tiny Chat, it just like looked kind of like whatever. It was just like a chat room type of thing. And same with, if I remember correctly, Mixler looks similar to like Tiny Chat in terms of like the layout. And it's just like clanky. But like you see Twitch, and I think Twitch is just like so streamlined, super clean, super easy to like navigate and all that stuff. So it's interesting that Ninja like went over to,
maybe it's
Mixler.
not, I could be wrong, because when I saw the article, I saw the branding for the other platform, and it had like really modern, clean looking branding. So that doesn't sound like what you're describing.
Then maybe they went and did a revamp.
Or maybe they revamped their whole thing. I don't know. But
yeah.
What I do know is, there's a streaming is huge, and that's only one part of the video game sort of ecosystem. Like they're huge, and like you were saying, with go ahead.
I was just gonna say like the tournaments too, and
Yes, yeah.
Like
dude, like League of Legends, Fortnite, StarCraft. What's the other big one? The other MOBA that's huge. Damn it, I cannot Smite. It's not League of Legends. It's still Dota.
Oh yeah, Dota. Yeah.
Like those huge tournaments will have millions and millions of dollars in cash prizes.
And there's just like so many people that like go to it and just watch it.
Video games, they're huge. And so going back to what you said, I think you're right that I would start looking. A lot of times video games were behind cultural trends, right? So something like skateboarding or beach culture or movies, right? Blade Runner or something comes out, and video games would draw their aesthetic from the media that came before them.
Right.
Now they're so big, it might go the other way around, like you said. Cyberpunk comes out, and that instead of video games taking inspiration from the fashion industry, maybe the fashion industry is now going to take inspiration from the video game, because the video game's so big.
Which I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look at what just came out. like on Netflix, the Witcher series.
Yeah.
And so like didn't that come from a book originally?
Witcher is originally a series of short stories and a couple books, and then the CD Projekt Red made a deal with the author, and then they did the 3 Witcher games.
Yeah.
And then the Netflix series is basically the books. So the Witcher games, well, not the games. The Witcher 3, what that everybody knows, basically that game, takes place after the Netflix show.
Got it. Okay.
So it's yeah, like I said, but it's gone, and that show's done amazing.
Yeah, no,
People love
everyone talks about it.
Have you watched it yet?
I haven't yet, but I've heard really good things.
You should watch it.
But I mean, like, I figured that the series was based off the books, but I didn't know if in any way the game might have tied in somehow.
Yeah,
like,
it's the game. I might be wrong on this. From what I understand, the part of the deal they made with the author, the first deal, which the author was unhappy about, and they've since renegotiated. It was news just recently, but part of the first deal was the author took a flat pay up front because he didn't think the games were going to do well, and the first 2 games didn't sell that much. But I think the initial deal was for a trilogy. They paid him up front, and then one of the other things was the games would not be considered officially canon. Because of his world, but they set at least the 3rd game. I haven't played the first 2 games. The 3rd game is set like way later than the show in the initial books. And what I understand is like the game, they sort of wrote it as like an unofficial extension or a sequel to the books. But I don't know if when the show catches up to that point, because the show's based on the books, if the show's going to follow the game or they're going to change it, because I think the game is not considered like official canon. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, so far, so Witcher 3 has like inferences about the past of all the main characters.
Yeah.
And all those same main characters are in the Witcher TV show. And I knew a ton about the show from playing the game. And so even though the game's not canon, like I understood the show like much better than someone who hasn't played the game. So it's close. I would recommend, I mean, it's one of those shows, if you start watching it, just know you're going to be confused. Because they, like, sort of expect you to understand the world of The Witcher.
Yeah.
And they don't really explain. They just kind of throw you into the middle of it and, like, figure it out, bitch.
Yeah, which is, I feel like some of the more popular adaptation of books into movies, like, a lot of them kind of just throw you into the world, like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or... what's the other one? Oh, like even what's the vampire series?
Which one? Oh, Twilight?
Twilight even too. Like they just kind of like throw you in. Actually, I think that one does a bit more of like an introduction. But I mean, for like what?
It's true because you just don't have the time in a movie,
right?
To like develop things like you do in a book.
Yeah. And so, like, in the books, I think they kind of, like, introduced you, whereas the movies, they just, like, throw you in. Like, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Twilight, and some other one, maybe, but I don't remember what.
I never read those books, but I did watch Twilight 1 or 2. But it was such a cultural... I did like it because it was, like, popular, and all the hot girls were in Twilight, so it's like, well, I gotta know what it is, because all these hot girls are talking about this Twilight thing. Apparently Edward's where it's at. Yeah. Do I need to be more like Edward?
I gotta be like him. But yeah, I remember reading the books, and then I saw the movies, and the movies were shit.
They were so bad.
They're horrible.
The only thing I thought was cool in the first movie is when he stops a car from hitting her, and, like, he's so strong, like, dents the car in.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he's got super strength. Okay, this is cooler. But then they never did anything. Like, he didn't beat any people up. He didn't do anything. He didn't do any cool shit.
It was like a little, like, tease, like a little, like, cock tease or something.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, all right, that's it. And it was, like, focusing more on, like, the relationship and all that stuff.
Yeah, I knew it was, like, a girl's love story thing, but I thought, like, vampire and werewolves... There's still going to be some dope
action,
shit.
Especially like in a movie setting too.
Yeah.
But
no, there wasn't.
There was nothing.
There was like nothing.
So, but yeah, and I remember like what
I don't remember. Somehow we got on the Twilight, and now our brains are dead because we're talking about vampire fantasy novels, which was that lady was Mormon that wrote those. It's like a Mormon lady that was writing like these sexual fantasy novels about vampires and shit. Worked
Makes
out, man.
sense.
She's probably a bajillionaire.
She's a bajillionaire. She's probably
bajillionaire.
like, man, Mormonism saved my life or some shit like that.
If
Or
she's
maybe
still Mormon, she's paying the church hella money on that, so they're happy about it.
I was gonna say, or she's not Mormon, and now she's just like, now I get to
Now that
live
she's
my
rich,
fantasies.
yeah. I don't know. That whole thing was like that Twilight thing is a crazy phenomena, but I don't think Twilight is going to age into like a
It'll
cultural
age
classic
into,
like Lord of the Rings did.
It'll definitely age into something cheesy for sure.
It'll be like a cheesy thing we remember.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to bring up, speaking of cheese, I know we both have a soft spot in our heart for just the most emo things of all emo. There's a emo kid, I don't know his name. I think he played in some like old school emo bands, but he does just like a solo instrumental metal project. He just plays guitar, like a million guitar parts. He's fucking good guitar, and he like programs real drums and bass. And it's called I Built the Sky, which is a total emo name.
It sounds emo for sure.
It sounds emo as shit because there's something about the sky. Why do so many emo bands have like sky and moon and stars and anyway? I Built the Sky, and it's just instrumental. Like take emo, get rid of all the singing, and just do like the cool riffs and metal. And like metal, it's like a little bit of chug and metal, like a little bit of prog, but then also emo rock. And it's instrumental. No, that's like a really big guilty pleasure. I think you'd like it.
There's someone else that does something similar to that, and I can't remember the name of him, but he has a song, and it was my favorite song, and it was called Mako Reactor. And it was like similar shit, like super like progressive stuff, and it was just him, and it was really tight. I can't remember the name, but I just remember the name of the song, Mako Reactor.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But
go ahead.
but yeah, I remember like finding like all sorts of like projects like that, just like little like, hey, here's me and my guitar, and oh, now you can program drums on a computer and do the bass easy. Buy a little interface.
You get a bunch of dudes that they can put their music out because they don't. The barrier to entry is lower because you don't have to find 4 dudes you get along with and practice. You can just say, I got these cool ideas in my head. I'm fucking good at the guitar, and I want to get these riffs out, and I can make it happen.
Boom. And that was like what Misha Mansour did from Periphery. He was just like making demos, and then it turned into a band. And sounds like after a while, the singer got sick of them, or they got sick of the singer.
I don't know.
Something like that. But they were just like, all right, we need a new whoever. And then because I think it's basically Misha's project. Like he like writes everything, and I think the drummer might write his parts, but like everything else is pretty much like, okay, this is what I wrote, do it.
You know, I played the band that did the best as far as like selling tickets, playing big shows, was this like cheesy kind of. Do you remember a band called Enter Shikari?
Yeah, of course.
I was in this like band we were trying to be Enter Shikari 2.0, and it was the lead singer wrote everything. So I had played in a bunch of bands. I was pretty decent at drums, and a bunch of bands failed, and I was always like trying to make prog. I was into prog music and trying to make complicated musician music. And then this dude hit me up and he's like, "Hey, I want you to play drums for me, but actually you don't have to do like. There's not going to be any practicing. I'm just going to send you a file. I've already written everything."
How weird.
And I'm like, okay, it's just good experience for me. And I didn't love the music. It wasn't really. I kind of was getting to that emo stuff. Actually, playing this band sort of opened me up to that style of music. But I had been in like one band prior to that for like 5 years, and we worked our way up to like 1 album's worth of material, and we played a handful of shows. Then the band broke up. Right, like 5 years for like. From the time that he called me and sent me a demo till we played our first show was like 3 weeks.
Wow.
It's because
that was quick.
This was like early Fruity Loop days, and he could just write everything.
Yeah.
And then we just send it to us. We'd learn it. We'd show up. We'd all have our parts memorized individually. We'd play together as a band a handful of times, make some tweaks, and then boom, we were ready to play show. And it was like so weird for me to go from, so it doesn't take 5 years to get to a point where you can, I don't know if it was really 5 years, but it just blew my mind and that was early back in the day. And the demos he made sounded like garbage. The drums didn't sound real, but it was enough for you to know what you needed to play, what he had written. And it was enough for him to get his idea out. And now I think technology and plugins, especially drumming. Like there's a bunch of really good drumming programs that I've been playing with. Sometimes they're like, I can actually program drums that sound better than me recording them because all the samples are perfect and I can make it all perfect and they can end up sounding real. And sometimes I can do that faster than recording myself and cleaning up the recording versus just programming it with a good drum tool.
And they sound relatively good.
It sounds relatively, and because I'm a drummer, I know how to like make little tweaks to make it sound like a person's actually playing it.
Yeah.
And I can do it really fast. And I think that's awesome that like some dude like I built this guy or the guy you can't remember, like, I don't need there's just, it's good because there's more creativity out there, but then it's also harder to be seen. It's harder to be found. I don't know how I found that. It was a YouTube video, I think. And he was like a total cliche. He had a like the emo thing
swoop
still going on, and he was on the top of like a cliff with a 360 drone camera, just playing air guitar. It was so cheesy. It was awesome.
Damn. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of stuff I used to listen to. Like I was sitting in the nose like that guy Never Shout Never, and he was all like emo, and he ended up doing like folk music. But at first, like he's got like a laptop, and he was making like beats and like singing on them, and it's just like crazy. Like seeing from it was like 2007 to like now.
To now,
much,
yeah.
Where like people are just like, yeah, we don't need bands anymore. Like,
no,
I can just do it myself. And now it's like it's crazy that like a band will get paid like what, like $5,000 maybe, and now one person gets paid
the same $5,000,
$5,000 if not more,
and they don't have, they don't gotta lug any shit around, they don't gotta
they just show up with like a couple of pads if anything, or like a USB most of the time, and like that's it.
Well, your world, the producer playing out world, is even, you show up with a backpack.
Well, I don't even show up with the backpack.
If they have CDJs there, I guess you just show up and plug your USB drive in.
Yeah, I literally bring a USB and headphones, and that's it. And it's just like...
And then take your money.
And you take the money, baby, and you're just like, all right. And then you fly it back, and it's just like so simple.
That is... it's a little bit different now because you pretty much have to produce now in order to also play gigs and DJ. Right. I don't know a ton of guys that are just strictly DJs, but think about like 2000, I don't know, I would say like 8, maybe 2006 to 2014 or 2015. Mm-hmm. You could just be a DJ and make a shit ton of money. You didn't even have to produce tracks.
You just played tracks.
You just got good at mixing, which is not, I'm not saying like that's a skill in and of itself, but there's just so much, the barrier to entry. Like you don't have to make the tracks, you don't have to be a band, you don't have to play an instrument, you don't have to haul anything, you don't have to have a crew. You show up with your backpack and your headphones and your USB drive, and if you're some of the big guys, they were making ridiculous amount of monies. Just freedom units, as I call it. And I guess it's died down now, but there was probably a good while where I wonder how much money, like your average, like mid-tier DJ was making in like 2008, 2007.
Still, probably like,
doing pretty good.
Like a mid-tier, maybe like 2-3
G's a show?
Yeah, like per show.
Because I know festivals like, you know, someone like Calvin Harris or those, like, obviously those guys put out tracks, but I don't think they're really producing tracks. I think they have a team and people they pay behind them.
Right.
And so they get flown into the club, they play their set, they get their 100,000 G's or whatever, and then they fly out of the club and
they fly to the next one pretty much.
Yeah, I had Tim Spencer he was on last episode. His episode hasn't come up yet. He went on tour with Rihanna as he handled like the photo booth for her tour, like something to do with the fans. So he went on tour with Rihanna all over Europe, and her opening act was Calvin Harris.
Oh, I remember that tour.
And he basically said he would fly in, play the same set for Rihanna. It was like generally the same set every night. It's like maybe a couple songs different. And then he would open for Rihanna, make his money, and then you'd get on a helicopter and fly to a different club and play a different set that night. And then usually play like a third, maybe late night set.
Oh, so 3 sets in the same night? 2 to 3
sets a night, and he was on tour for like most of the tour. Then he goes home and chills. But during that like whatever 6-week, 8-week span, probably made millions of dollars.
Yeah, especially 3 times. Like,
Yeah, and he's
jeez.
opening for Rihanna. Like, I mean, Calvin Harris he's obviously huge, like one of the biggest DJs ever.
He is the highest paid.
He's the highest paid one.
He's the highest paid or like the most wealthy one, whatever. But I think I remember him seeing and like he's number one. Like
I wonder how Calvin Harris became Calvin Harris. Like what it was like before, because the barrier to entry to producing music was hard. You needed like really good gear, the like the DAWs and the lap. But then eventually got to this point, like if you can afford a laptop and a mouse, and there's obviously more shit. But I remember when you first started, like even to this day when I've seen you work recently, you just have a mouse.
Yeah, it's just a mouse.
That's all you
now.
need. A mouse and a keyboard.
And I mean, like back in the day, it was just like you needed like guitars and like
Yeah.
you had to plug it in to be able to even hear it.
You need
and
the
now
gear
it's just
and the
like,
room and
yeah, and like the treatment and like if you want to record it, you gotta plug all this stuff in. And now it's just like, oh, you download a program, you put your headphones on, if you even have them, and then you just like start making sounds, and it comes right out of your laptop, and it's just like,
Yeah, the barrier to entry is so low. This will actually be a good last question, and I think I'll segue back into video games. If the barrier of entry was, if like technology got so good that you could make a full video game by yourself with the same amount of effort that you make music, what kind of game would you make?
what kind of game? Probably like a puzzle game.
Puzzle game?
Yeah, like a puzzle game, but it's like in this very obscure world, and yeah, just because like all the games now, like there's just it feels like it's just like for shooter games, for example, it's just like, oh, you go and you shoot and that's that. Like you do another round.
Yeah.
Like Call of Duty and all that shit, or like Fortnite and PUBG and all that. I mean, like there's like the really cool puzzle games like The Witcher and Dark Souls and all that like I've seen so many people just praise because they're so well done.
Yeah.
And so like I think doing something in that realm, I don't know what setting I would do. Maybe something like more futuristic.
So you do sci-fi?
Yeah, probably like Blade Runner meets like Cyberpunk meets like, I don't know, like Star Trek or something like that, or Star Wars, whatever. Like just like some like futuristic thing, but maybe having this like, maybe almost like Westworld, to where it's like this like mix of like old and new. Like I think that could be cool too.
That could be cool. So yeah, like you take some sort of ancient setting like feudal Japan or Dark Ages, but it's actually somehow sci-fi. Like everyone's robots.
Yeah, I mean, like even like in the first Blade Runner, like I remember it was just like it was in the like the 80s. Is that when it came out? The first Blade Runner.
I want to say mid 80s.
Yeah,
88 maybe.
And so just like seeing how that was, like it. I mean, obviously, like the effects weren't as good, but it was like this more older look. But they were trying to make it look really new and advanced, and so just like this, like I guess like mix of old and new.
Yeah.
Like digital and natural, like coming together, like some fusion of that, and just like making it like dystopian or like apocalyptic or something like that. Like what's that apocalyptic game? What is it?
Apocalyptic game.
Yeah.
Is it sci-fi apocalyptic?
Yeah, and like you have a gun and it has like the cartoon guy on the front of the case. Oh, Fallout.
Fallout. Yeah. Fallout.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge series. Yeah.
So like something like that, where it's like apocalyptic, but it's like the end of the era, the end of the age or whatever.
The end of the era. So that'd be your world. What type of game would it be? Fallout, like first-person shooter, side-scroller?
Maybe like third person.
Third person?
I personally like third person.
Me too. I'm a big,
Like I do like first person, but I like third person because it's easier to see like in combat and stuff.
I like seeing your character. It's rewarding to see like your guy or your girl. Yeah.
Right. Like why would you spend all this time creating a character if you can't even see them?
You can't see them, yeah.
Because like especially nowadays, it feels like every game I play, like you have to like spend all. Well, you don't have to, but like you have this option to spend all this time making this character, and if you can't see it, it's like, okay, what's the point of that?
Yeah, that's the one thing. The only thing I'll say negative about Cyberpunk. I think it was 2 years ago when they revealed it was going to be first person. I was really bummed.
Oh, it's not going to be third?
It's not third person like The Witcher. It's first person. They've released. You should check it out. They've released 2 this year at E3, and the previous year at E3 they released some gameplay footage. So there's about like an hour and a half of gameplay you can watch right now online. It's gonna be awesome, and I trust CD Projekt Red, but I'm so stoked for that game, and I agree with you. I prefer third person so much more than first person that I was legitimately bummed out for a few days. I had to like go through denial and acceptance.
Yeah, you're like,
okay,
what?
this game's gonna be first person. Yeah, I generally don't like it. My brother's the same way. He's recently got into gaming. He's got some heart problems, and so he's not working. He's always time to kill. So me and my other brother have been like, he doesn't really play games, like getting him into games just to give him something to do.
Yeah.
And he says right out of the gate, we gave him a bunch of games and he didn't like the first person ones, but liked the third person ones.
Yeah.
I think it's just it's a better way to play.
Yeah. And personally, I like the games where you can switch between the two.
That's the best of both worlds, yeah.
Yeah, because then like sometimes like you need that first person look and sometimes you need the third. So dang, I wish Cyberpunk had both.
I guarantee, because there was a big outcry amongst all the nerds online about it being first person. Someone in those PC games, and The Witcher specifically, has a very robust mod community where people do mods for the game. Someone will create a mod that will let you play the game third person. It will It will definitely happen. Will the game play as good? It's going to be a community made mod, most likely. It'll probably be janky and have bugs, but
yeah, I mean, like I feel like any mod is like janky and like not perfect, but still, yeah. I mean, you're right. Like someone will probably like make a mod to where it's like able to, or like maybe down the line they'll update it somehow to like add that view, which would be.
They might
crazy.
patch it in. They did a good job with Witcher 3. Like, I got Witcher 3 when it launched, like very early, and it was actually a pretty janky game. The menu system had problems, but they did a really good job of doing patches, supporting the game for like with regular patches. I want to say for well over a year, because I gave up on The Witcher 3 the first time I played it, and then I came back to it and. Like, you know, when you leave a game and you come back to it, it's like, oh, this game needs to be updated before you can play it.
Right.
They had done a bunch of updates on the game since I had quit playing it. And it was almost not a brand new game, but like 0.5, like a half of a new game. Like as far as the way it controlled. The menu system was completely overhauled and way more intuitive. So maybe with Cyberpunk, if the demand is really there, they'll add it. But I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, their first successful game was Witcher 3, right?
The first mega successful game, yeah.
Right. So
Witcher 2 did okay. Witcher 1 is like, I don't know, but Witcher 3 made a lot of money, which is they actually got in a little bit of a tiff with the author because he's like, I got my money paid up front when he licensed them to be able to make a game around his Witcher universe. He took the upfront money instead of getting the like residual income.
Right.
But he didn't. But then when all of a sudden Witcher 3 sold like 80 million copies or whatever ridiculous number it sold, he's like, oh, I would have been a multi-millionaire had I taken the other deal.
Residual, yeah.
But they needed to rework the deal in order to make a sequel, because the official deal I think was only for 3 games. So anyway, he's going to get some of that money now. For sure.
Oh, so he's doing a fourth, or they're going to make a Witcher 4?
I think they will, because the headline that went around the video game news world was that they had negotiated a new deal. And why would CD Projekt Red negotiate a new deal if they didn't want to make a new game?
Right.
So that's the idea. Cyberpunk's obviously going to come out this year, which means they've probably already started pre-production on their next game, which people are assuming is going to be a new Witcher. The TV series is already out and doing really well. And they're probably going to do a second and third season. And by the time the Witcher Netflix series is like 2-3 seasons, maybe 4 seasons deep, they'll be ready to launch the new game and really capitalize on Witcher's going to be even bigger. With Netflix series being successful, the brand's going to be huge.
Like Witcher 4
Witcher 4 is going to sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to make some cash. All right, my last question to wrap it up is, what is your favorite gaming memory? Not the necessarily game, but the most magical, nostalgic like time you've ever had playing games.
I mean, for me, the best thing was waking up on Saturday morning and just like being like, all right, I'm waking up early. I'm going to play games all fucking day, and just like
I have
waking
nothing
up.
else to do.
Yeah, like being like, what was I, like 10, 11 years old, and like I went to like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster or whatever, and be like, "Okay, I have this game for 3 days or something like that, so I'm just gonna fucking beat it." And then just take it back. And so I'll just wake up and like have my cereal, like some super sugary cereal, and not eat for the rest of the day and just game all day until like dinner time, and then like be like, okay, I'm gonna stay up until 6 a.m. and just keep going.
Because I have no responsibilities.
Because I have nothing to do, like school. That was it. And now I'm just like, man, part of me wishes to go back to that, but I'm also like, being an adult's not the worst.
It's not the worst. I do feel for those like worry, responsibility-free times when you could just get completely involved into a game. My second EP, I put out 2 songs, kind of trying to like around that same idea. I put out a song called JRPG Sundays, which is the same idea. Being young,
just wake up,
and Sunday, like there's no school, and because I grew up Mormon, I wasn't allowed to like hang out with friends and do anything on Sundays. But they would let me play games.
Yeah.
My parents. So it's like, literally, it was a perfect excuse to like, well, I'm just going to play games all day.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing I can do, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, I remember going to church. I wasn't Mormon, but I remember like going to church and then coming home and be like, okay, we're going to make lunch. And I'd be like, peace out.
See ya.
I'm playing games.
Yeah, and then going to that, there is a magic. I think I was talking to Tim. There is definitely a magic that I miss by not having a Hollywood or a Blockbuster. There's something about like going to the store,
right,
looking through all the titles, walking around, and like maybe you're with someone and you're like, well, maybe this one,
yeah,
and then like picking it out, like, and then being all excited to go home. I love the convenience of modern technology, but there is something to that. I put a song called out "Biking to Blockbuster" because the same thing. Like the game was fun, but almost just as much fun was like the freedom
experience of
like going there. I can ride all the way to Blockbuster myself, pick the game out I want, ride all the way home, and like
and like physically holding it, whereas now you can just download it to like your console. But
that's a good memory. I like that you didn't pick a game specifically, but just the concept of those glory days. And those are the days, like I mentioned before, that I think where your taste is really formed for a lot of your rest of your life. Movies, music, games. It's because you're in that stage where you're old enough to like really grasp the concepts and then get into the worlds, but you're young enough that you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Like, you think you have something to worry about because some kid called you penis breath at school, or you
have homework.
Or you have homework, or the girl likes your friend, and then whatever makes you feel all emo. But really, you don't have anything, and you can game all day, or Saturday, Sunday. Oh man, good times.
And then the worst thing was being grounded for a month from video games, and you're like, no, what do I do with my time now? It's just all gone.
My parents could never make the video game grounding stick, probably because I would just be so unruly and annoying. If I had like, just let them play the goddamn game. Like, stop asking me to entertain you. Just go play the game. But I remember having similar days like that, specifically Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy IX. Where we wake up because the games are long.
Yeah.
And if you're renting them, you don't like.
You gotta put in a lot of time.
That's 40, 50 hours to get through in like 3 to 4 days.
Yeah.
Which can be done at 13 when you have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I'm surprised my parents, like, if I watched my kid just stare, like if you didn't have any understanding of what games or TVs were, like maybe you're from like 1750. And you go through a time machine, and you go to a room, and it's you at 13 years old playing Driver for 12 hours straight, right? You don't know what a game is. You don't know what TV is. You would think that, like, oh, this human's possessed, and the TV's like some sort of demon or something, right?
Because like taking their soul
it's
in.
Just sucking you away. And I'm surprised, like, my parents let me just play that many games.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's funny now because, like, when I see my brother, like, I see him play games, and I'm just like, hey, like, do something else with your life.
Yeah.
But I was the same way. So I'm like being a hypocrite.
Yeah, I think at that age, you can kind of let it slide. The hope is that it doesn't sort of ruin the kid to, like, focus and work later. I mean, that might be a possibility. I don't know enough about the psychology. It didn't ruin me. I never felt like I had a hard time buckling down and focusing when I actually needed to. Like,
yeah. Like I would definitely procrastinate.
Definitely that.
And then like it would. I remember like in high school it being like 10 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, "Fuck, that paper's due tomorrow." So I'd just like bust it out,
And then you'd be
like,
amazed at like how smart you and how quickly you can actually
Yeah.
bust it out.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I'm actually good at this shit.
Yeah. You go and you just bust it out, and then you're just like, "All right, I did it."
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
good times.
Sweet, man. Well, where can people so Gaszia, do you still do music and stuff outside of X&G under Gaszia?
No, I mean like I make stuff all the time, but I don't put anything out. But yeah, mainly just X and G stuff.
So where do they find you? xng.com.
Yeah, you can find me at Gaszia on Instagram and Twitter, Gaszia, and then the main thing is X and G, and that's X and G Music. So XANDG Music on Instagram and Twitter, and yeah.
We got upcoming shows. Anything coming down the pipeline? Releases?
Yeah. So we're going to Denver on Thursday.
Nice.
Playing this new venue called Temple, and should be a good time. Pretty stoked. And then playing Vegas at the end of the month at this place called Commonwealth. It's on Fremont Street, actually right next to Beauty Bar. So
okay.
I'm curious.
And that's who, what's his face booked you for that one?
Mauricio.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he booked, and like I guess he like is good friends with our manager, and so they all set that up. And that's pretty much it. I don't think we have anything else set up. We have some music coming out, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I gotta wait.
Okay.
But music is coming out
Unofficially, there's some music coming.
very soon.
Yeah, sweet.
So
All right, check it out. X&G online. Gaszia. Peace.
peace out. Thanks again.
All right. That is a wrap. And if you're listening to this, it means you listened to the entirety of the episode. And I'll tell you what, I had a very large amount of vodka to drink while editing this podcast. So I know that like 10 people listen to the podcast, and one of you, and I have a good idea of who you are, or the two of you are, that actually listen to the end of the podcast. So shout out to you, badasses. Much love from my drunk heart to your hopefully also drunk heart. Thanks for listening. Anyone else, if you happen to make this and surprise me by listening to the entirety of the podcast and made it to the outro, I call upon the holy trifecta of gaming gods to rain down blessings upon thee and thy posterity for all generations to come. Flesh and the bone and the sinews, and power in your priesthoods. May your posterity dominate your enemies with ease and no mercy. Next week on the podcast, I don't know who we have yet. But I'm not going to skip any weeks, so we'll get somebody. If at the very absolute worst, I might do like a monologue on some games that I like. Because I'll tell you what, the hardest part about doing a podcast is not the actual podcast. It's not the editing. It's not the uploading. It's not the optimizations. It's not even talking to people, which talking to people can be kind of hard. I've learned over time. There is definitely an art to carrying on a conversation and keeping the vibe. That is a little bit hard, but the hardest part about this whole shit is scheduling people. Everybody say yes, but no one want to pin down a motherfucking time. I'll tell you what, I love all of our guests. All of them have been awesome. Obviously, the ones who I haven't been able to nail down have been the most flaky, haven't been recorded yet. But dude, I don't know if it's just me and I was raised in a super traditional family. Like, my dad always told me, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And that also comes with commitments and times. Getting you assholes to commit to a time to fucking do a podcast is like trying to get my damn toddler to eat broccoli. Like, it is easier to get my 3-year-old to not shit her pants than to get you motherfuckers to show up on time when you said you were going to show up. Weak. But you know what? Everyone who's actually been recorded thus far doesn't have that problem. That's why they've been recorded, and that's why I've released an episode. It's all you assholes who have said yes that flake on me, who are probably not listening to this. But God damn it, guys. I love you all. I want you to be on the podcast. But I'm a grown-ass man with a job, a business, kids, and other hobbies. Don't fucking flake on me. Come on, guys. You're making this shit harder than it needs to be. Anyway, next week on the podcast, it's either going to be me rambling about some games that I loved, maybe like a little mini documentary, or it's going to be someone dope. Either way, tune in, tell your friends, family, coworkers, pets. Like I said at the beginning of the intro, people you don't even like at work, tell them all about the Gaming Memories podcasts. Podcasts, you know what I mean. The Gaming Memories podcast. We got multiple episodes, so I can say podcast. That's plural. Tell them about it. You'll be blessed. I love you. See you next week. Bye-bye.